In studio with us, Executive Vice President and General Manager Nick Caserio. Nick, back from the bye. How was it for you?
Fellas, good to be here. Like we never left.
Yeah, it is like we never left.
You probably never did leave, though.
Yeah, that's right. You were even coming in here on Sunday because you had a family
At the
event here.
NRG Arena, my youngest daughter had a cheerleading competition, so she was here at 7 o'clock Sunday morning.
Oh, my gosh. How
It was
did
like
that
being
go?
a part of game day. She did a great job. She did an
terrific.
awesome job. It was a lot of fun.
That's got to be stressful to watch, though.
More for my wife.
Okay.
I'm just there and just let them go through it. She's hooting, hollering, screaming. But it was awesome. It was really good.
It's got to
She
be
had
cool
fun.
to go through that with her, to be able to be there, to have the bye week. I know we've talked about all the negative things about having a bye week so late. Everybody's so tired, fatigued, but the timing works that you get a chance to be there for that. It's great.
No, last week I had a chance to do that on Sunday, and then it was the middle of the week, later in the day, our middle daughter had a soccer game, so to be able to go over there and watch her play soccer. So lose sight sometimes. Like, we have a job to do, but we're also husbands, fathers, dads. I mean, so we want to make sure we don't lose sight of what's important.
Is there a time of year where you really unplug? Is it that break between mini camp and training camp?
Yes. Once you get through, call it May into June, so really June, call it middle of June to middle of July, is literally unwind, nothing. The building's empty, everybody's away. That's the opportunity to really just be away from football, understanding the rigors of what's going to be in front of us.
There was some talk last year, Nick, and I don't know if you want to speak to this or not, but that time is pretty important because families are getting out of school, kids are getting out of school, so you get that chance. Well, there was some talk last year about kind of moving the offseason, kind of changing around. And I remember seeing a couple things from scouts that were unnamed. I was like, man, if we lose that time, holy cow, when are we ever going to be with our families?
The one thing we all learn being in the NFL, you'll adjust and adapt to whatever the situation, the circumstances are. There will likely be some level of discussion in the offseason about how to best structure it. So whatever the rules are, we'll be prepared for it either way. And we adapt and adjust in this league. That's probably a hallmark of a lot of people that are doing this.
All right, so not to ask for a State of the Union here, Nick, but we're going into a really tough 3-game stretch. Nothing more important than Sunday against the Miami Dolphins. And coming off the bye, what are your observations and thoughts as you embark on the final 4 games of the regular season?
Yeah, it was a good opportunity last week for the team to just really get away. Honestly, for our situation, less was more. So we didn't practice. We came in on Monday, met, went through some things. And it was really best for everybody to just kind of take a step away, kind of take inventory. Coaches had an opportunity to go through some of the film. You do a little bit of the self-scout. What are some of the things that we talked about this even going into last week? What are some of the things that we've done well? What can we improve upon? What are some things that we might be able to implement on the margins? So team's in a good spot. Came in the other day, trying to treat a normal Tuesday as a normal off day, and then get back ready to go Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, a normal week, if you will. And then once we get through the Miami game, then the timing will be a little bit different. So all we can do is control what's in front of us, which is Miami. Understanding on the back end of that, we'll have to make some modifications and adjustments for the next few games.
So Christian Harris, Kenyon Green, that was a little bit of a talking point about coming back to practice. Kenyon, we obviously have seen play this year. Christian, we have not seen play this year. Last game he played was that game against the Ravens. It's a long time for your body to not be callous to the physicality of the NFL. Nick, what are your thoughts about just each one of them and what they might possibly be able to bring and what they bring back to practice?
Anytime you're away from football, there's always going to be an adjustment period. So to your point, Kenyon has had an opportunity to really went through training camp. He played 8-9 games, whatever it was, missed a period of time. We'll see where he is physically. Christian's just missed a lot of football. They're no one's fault of anybody's fault. It's just the reality of where we are. So what we try to do when we prepare the athlete is monitor as best we can their loads, what they're going through. Are they physically ready for what a normal practice would look like? The game is a separate stimulus. So if, in fact, he is ready to play and does end up playing a game, that'll be another step. So nobody's going to get everything back all at once. You have to take proper steps along the way. Christian's had a good attitude despite what he's had to go through. We'll go through the week of practice. We'll evaluate it, and then we'll try to make the decision that makes the most sense for the team come Sunday.
You talked about this before, about monitoring players. Is that more week to week or is that more cumulative?
It's twofold, Johnny. So we look at it during the course of the week. You're just trying to get a gauge of what a player's normal workload is. You kind of set a baseline, and then you're able to evaluate that on a weekly basis. Is he doing more? Is he doing less? Do we have to do a little bit extra? Is he reaching a certain level of speed during the course of practice? Because whatever you do in practice, you want to make sure you're prepared if you're to put your body through that in the course of a game. So practice becomes reality. So you're not going to do something in a game that you haven't done in practice. So you just want to be as prepared as you can physically. But we do, to your question, we monitor all of that.
Yeah.
And it's really just to kind of get a baseline understanding of where the player is. So we understand if we're taxing him more, taxing him less, or just we need to increase his workloads to some degree.
All right, going over some things in no particular order here. We were talking about the tight end group and Cade Stover. Cade has done a really good job for you, fullback, tight end, whatever he's doing out there. And Schultz, obviously. Irv Smith played against the Jaguars. Andrew Beck is back in the organization. What about that whole group, Nick?
Yeah, we've had to make some adjustments as we have gone through the season. So started the year with Brevin. Brevin likely was going to have significant impact on the offense. Unfortunately, he got hurt. So then we had to pivot in a different direction. We brought Teagan back. So Teagan was here in training camp, missed some time with the injury, was able to give us a handful of games, whatever it was. Irv has kind of been here for a period of time. Irv's an experienced player his career's kind of evolved. He's kind of been at a couple different places. He's kind of changed kind of the type of player that he is now relative to what he was coming out. But Irv's a very professional kid, works really hard, has got a good attitude, went in the game, and was actually able to execute some of his assignments. So, and Andrew has experience in our program in a variety of different levels. So at some point, whoever is in the building, there's a good chance we're probably going to need him, like we've talked about. So, and Troy Hairston's given us some plays as well in the kicking game. We activated him for whatever week that was, and then he went and played, made an impact play in the kicking game. So our depth is, if it's not on the roster, it's off the roster, and at some point we're likely going to have to use everybody, and those are two. I'd say Irv's a really good example, especially late in the week, getting called up, and he went on there and played competitively against the Jaguars.
Yeah, I was thinking about it today because I just saw Cade a little while ago. I was chatting with him for a second, and I looked on the wall, and I see on the wall we have offense, defense, special teams players of each win. And you look up there and you're like, wait, Cade's up there. Boy, that's a special teams tackle he made against the Colts. He's done some things on special teams. He had a tackle the other day against Jacksonville. How important has that been to adding to the mix, whether you guys thought he could do it or not when you drafted him?
Well, you increase your overall value to the team if you can handle a multitude of roles. So in Cade's particular case, started his career on the defensive side of the ball, transitioned to tight end. So he has a little bit of a defensive mentality, but he's got good playing strength. He's got good athleticism. He runs well. He's tough. He's physical. He's shown the ability to make tackles in space. So in a backup capacity, sort of hybrid role, and then to also have value in the kicking game, I would say Brevin is a good example of a player who really improved significantly in the kicking game. We were counting on him as much as we were offensively for a role in the kicking game as well. So anytime you can do anything to increase your overall value to the team, then it's certainly going to make a difference.
How about the offensive line coming off that performance against the Jaguars, what you did in the second half, and moving forward out of the bye playing the Dolphins?
Yeah, that group has done a pretty good job. Really, since the Jets game, we've kind of shored up some things protection-wise, and we've been able to run the ball. So, you'll kind of see where we are at, and Kenyon back in the mix. You know, players like Zach Thomas have gotten some different reps at different points. We've had a number of players that have kind of been in and out. So similar to the tight end position, there's a good chance we're probably going to need everybody there in the offensive line. But, I mean, the mainstays have kind of been the two tackles in Shaq, and then the inside players we've kind of had to rotate to some degree from center to left guard. So kind of see where we are here moving forward.
Defensive line last week, no sacks, but maybe wasn't a game that was kind of conducive to that. Max seemed like he was getting the ball out, obviously, you know, after Trevor went out. What's your thought about kind of how all that's now – coming together, with Mario coming back off the suspension, with Danico back, guys that were banged up. Will was banged up, but now he's back. How do you like kind of the mix of what you've got on the front?
Yeah, that's probably been as consistent and productive a group as we've had on the football team. They've all played. They've all impacted the game in their varying roles to some degree. So the fact that we kind of have all of them, we'll kind of see where Foley is at some point. Yep. Would expect to see him back on the field, so he certainly brings a presence on the inside part of the defense from a run perspective. So that group overall has been fairly productive, and it's good to have them all available.
Yep. What do you want to see from the offense overall here, Nick, as we get into the final 4 games of the regular season? More consistency, I would imagine, but what are you looking for?
Yeah, I mean, I think you alluded to it, Mark. That's a big thing as an overall team, is just playing consistent football, trying to play good, clean football from start to finish. So we've done it in spurts. We've done it at different quarters. We've done it in different parts of the half. The areas that are going to have an impact on winning moving forward are going to be the turnover margin, how that goes, production on third down, and then how you perform in a red area. So when you look across the league, typically the teams that perform the best in those areas are the ones that are, going to put themselves in a pretty good position. I would say from our perspective, those are probably 3 tangible areas. If we can just make some incremental improvements, it's going to help the overall football team, and then just maintain a certain level of performance in the kicking game. So that's a big thing. And each week is going to present its own challenges. So the challenge in front of us here is Miami and what they provide. We'll talk about them here in a minute. But overall, as a team, is just playing good, consistent football from start to finish, and then we'll see where we are at the end of the game.
I mean, you know exactly where we're going. We're done with the State of the Union stuff. Let's talk about the Dolphins, a team that's won a few in a row. Tua's back. Tyreek, Jalen, some names that we know, but defensively they did some decent things last week against the Jets. You're scouting reporting the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, really good football team. This is a playoff team. So last year they went 11-6, made the playoffs, and a lot of the players that were on that team, are on the current team here. Tua makes a significant difference when he's available. He's played as well as any quarterback in the league since he's returned from the injury. I think he leads the league in completion percentage. Yep. He's very accurate with the football. His ball placement is exceptional, and there's a timing element to their passing game, and he does a really good job. Takes care of the football. I think he's got 17-4 or something like that. He's completing 70+% of his passes, which that's a good place to start. So offensively, they just present a lot of problems because of their speed. When you look at, they really have 4 players that have 50-plus catches, including A-Chain. So between A-Chain, Jonnu, Tyreek, and Waddle, all 4 of them, when they get the ball in their hands, they can literally score touchdowns. So the speed and the stress that they put on the defense presents significant challenges. So they got good skill. Jonnu's really come on here over the last however many weeks. Jonnu's always been a good catch and run player. Couple of plays there at the end of the Jets game were illustrated that I took the 2 screens and he ate up 25, 30 yards before he got touched. So they certainly put a lot of stress on the defense from the skill positions. A-Chain makes a difference both in the passing game and the running game. And then Mostert's done a good job. They got some snaps out of right. And the offensive line, mostly on the perimeter, they've had some injuries they've had to deal with. Lost Jackson. Teron didn't play last week. Armstead, or he came out, he'll probably be available. Yeah. But the inside, they've been kind of the same core 3 group. So it's a really good offense that can score points in a hurry. And then defensively, Coach Weaver comes over from Baltimore, so they've implemented some different things. Starts with the front. They've got a lot of really good individual players. Probably a couple guys or one particular player doesn't get a lot of notoriety, which he should, is Seiler. Yeah. As good as any defensive lineman in the league, period. And here's a good example. Played Division II football at Ferris State, late round, 7th-round pick, whatever he was, started his career in Baltimore, and he's made himself into a really, really good football player. So between him and Jones inside, and then I'd say Chop is kind of similar to Smith on offense, but Chop Robinson has really come on, can stress the offense with his rush ability. Looks like they're going to get Chubb back, so they got a good front. Yep. Jordan Brooks leads them in tackles, who's fast, like a really fast linebacker, over 100 tackles. Excuse me, then Ramsey is basically a matchup tool. He can line up anywhere, plays on the perimeter, plays inside the formation. But it looks like they've kind of settled on him on a perimeter with Kahoo inside and then Fuller. And then Holland's a really good young player. And they brought Poyer over from Buffalo, who's their second leading tackler. So this is a really good football team, like we talked about. 11-6 last year. They're maybe not quite where they thought they were going to be, but they've played really good football here as of late. So, we're preparing to play, one of the better teams on our schedule, which is what they are.
Well, when you look at a guy like Calais Campbell, who it seems like he should have retired 10 years ago, Nick, but he's still playing, and he's still playing well for them. When you analyze players like that, what is it? Is it the way they take care of their body? Is it genetics? What do you determine is the factor there
all
that
the
keeps
above,
it going?
And he's as consistent and professional a player as there is, and he's available. So he always starts with availability. So he's obviously done enough things to make sure that he's there for his teammates every Sunday, and he's done that over the course of his career. And just his length, his 6'7", 300 pounds, they're hovering 35, 36-inch arms, presents a lot of problems. But in a true professional, like leadership, even though he's only been there probably for a year, my suspicion is he's had a significant imprint on the overall program from a leadership standpoint. So a lot of respect for Calais. Anytime you play that number of years, you can't but tip your hat to a player like that and what he brings to the team.
Tyreek and Jalen, you guys, we talked about it being fast. When we talk about Chan and Wright, those guys at running back give a different element because of the speed. But with Tyreek and Jalen, and I asked us of D'Amico in a kind of a sense, like, we know they're fast, but what makes them problematic? Like, we've seen fast guys before that can't be they just don't make plays. But these guys are fast, and it's like their speed allows them to make plays. What makes them so difficult?
Well, they're fast, time speed, and they play fast, and they play with urgency, and they both have a combination of speed and or short space quickness. So they can get away from the defense. Waddle can get away from coverage line of scrimmage. Tyreek transitions with the ball in an instant after the catch. So their ability to accelerate with the ball when they get into their hands, to play at their speed, that's what I would say is as taxing as anything else. And you see it. I mean, they both had over 100 catches or whatever it was last year. It was a lot. This year with 2 out, a little bit different, but you've seen over the last however many weeks, they've made a significant impact on the offense.
Seems like when they can't run the ball well, and I know they want to run it better, they just go with that short passing game, right? That high percentage completion stuff.
Yeah, it's really an extension of a running game. So even in overtime, going back to the game the other day, they had 2 screens to Jonnu, and they threw a screen to A-Chain, and they were basically in a red area. So sometimes those plays are not breather plays, but they're an extension of the running game. They're just plays that get to the perimeter of the defense. So there's as good a screen team, or at least a perimeter screen team, as there is in the league. I mean, Kansas City probably put them up there as a more traditional kind of screen team, which you'll see here, in a few weeks. But they do a good job with the passing game. They mix and match a little bit, and Tua does a good job not only on the screens, but of just taking what the defense gives them and then throwing a catchable ball and then giving their skill players an opportunity to transition with the ball after the catch.
I know you like to be good in both areas, but maybe against this group, it's not. I mean, maybe you can't be. But what's going to be more important this week, Nick, being good on first and second down or taking away the explosives? I mean, it's like you want to be able to do both.
The answer is yes.
Yes.
But it always starts with first down production.
Yeah.
So, because that puts you in a position where you're in more advantageous. But by the same token, long yardage, they have the ability to launch the ball over your head if you give them that opportunity to do so. So, first down production, I'm sure we'll talk about this on Sunday. It's certainly going to be the key to this game. And I would say, with these two teams offensively, it's certainly going to be at the forefront.
All right, a couple of wild card questions for you here.
Okay.
College football. We're in a playoff now. How is it for you, because you've analyzed college football for a long time, to see an actual bracket? When I saw the bracket, I just thought, we are in another era now. So how do you see this, and how does it affect what you do?
Yeah, it's like the NCAA tournament. So when the brackets come out, so it's interesting. Sure, they're kind of experimenting with what's the best formula. I'm sure there was discussion about who made it, who didn't make it. It looks like they're trying to save on travel with Notre Dame and Indiana playing right next to each other. But what you see is a lot of good football teams. We actually started our kind of first round of draft meetings here in preparation for the draft, which I know we're not talking about the draft. We will be at some point. But, so it'll be fun. I'm sure it'll be exciting. It adds a little bit more to the bowl games, the meaning of the actual bowl games. And then there's a handful of teams or 4 teams, whatever it was, that have the buys. So it'll be fun. I'm sure the fans will watch and tune in to some of the matchups, which look pretty interesting.
We can talk the draft if you want. I'll do it.
We'll talk the draft at any
You said
point.
we can't talk draft. I'm like, wait, it's like knife to my heart. So let's stick with college football, and you might be the perfect person. We've asked almost everybody because we saw this, rumor that's floating out there about your former boss potentially taking over at North Carolina, which when people see it go, what? Mind blown. North Carolina, not the NFL. And then you start thinking about it a little bit like, you know what? College is moving out towards the NFL. And Bill's always seemingly kind of found an inefficiency somewhere to take advantage of. And there aren't a lot of college teams that are doing it like NFL teams. And that's what it looks like he's doing. Your thoughts about if he potentially would take this job in North Carolina?
Yeah, whatever's going on externally, I would just say from, Bill's perspective, Bill enjoys coaching and he enjoys teaching, which at the end, that's what coaching is all about. And what better group to impact than 18 to 21-year-old kids. But the landscape as a whole, you're seeing a lot of overlap between college and pro football, how you set up a roster. The NLL collective is essentially a salary cap, so you have X amount of resources that you can allocate to certain players. You essentially have free agency with the transfer portal. So there's a lot of probably more elements than people realize. So not exactly sure what's going to happen in that situation, but probably people shouldn't be as surprised as they might be just relative to, Bill can basically coach probably any sport and be really good at it regardless of the level. So it'd be interesting but there's just a lot of overlap between college and pro football, more so than probably people realize.
Yeah, a lot of these teams have general managers now. And, Adrian
Andrew Luck.
Wojnarowski. Andrew Luck going back to Stanford to do that. I guess you got to be really good at Excel if you do that. So I'd be bad at this. You got to be really organized for this.
Excel is critical. No, you bring up Andrew Luck, but there's a good example. Even you kind of have a college front office. So whether it's a general manager kind of overseeing certain elements of the program, a lot of college programs now kind of have a director of player personnel, which kind of helps oversee recruiting. So again, you're seeing a lot of crossover and a lot of carryover, more so than you've probably seen in recent years. And you have a number of coaches that have worked in both arenas. Look at Boston College coach O'Brien and his experience in the NFL. Will Muschamp, who's at Georgia right now, has worked both in the NFL and college. You have Coach Saban is another good example. So it's an interesting time in collegiate sports, but there's probably more similarities than there are dissimilarities.
Has it changed y'all's approach and how you guys go about scouting and how you go about writing reports and things like that? Has that changed at all?
You're cognizant and aware of it. And it was funny, we were talking about this. So, all right, some players are multi-school transfers. Yeah. So what's the reason behind that? Some players have been allocated resources because of the NIL collective. So they're essentially making X number of dollars. So more than anything, it's just having an awareness and understanding. It doesn't necessarily affect the evaluation of the player. It just creates a little bit more context into the overall profile that goes into the prospect.
All right, another wild card question. There was an event in Houston last weekend, sumo wrestling. Hear me out,
I missed
Nick.
that one. I
Hear
didn't make
me
that
out.
appearance.
Hear me out.
Did you talk to
up.
Stroud and Parsons about this one?
The average weight is 325, and you've seen sumo wrestling. This had to have been tried before.
Where was this?
I don't know. It was in Houston somewhere. Okay. I read it in the Chronicle, and I just thought, why aren't these guys looked at? Maybe they are. You can tell me, because I know that there's a lot of efforts out there to find international players in the NFL. But 325, Nick, and they're going at each other, and maybe there's some balance and some traits that can carry over. There we go.
Low center of gravity. That's about the only thing I can think of. Okay. So maybe the NFL can. Actually, the International Pathway program, they have international players, so maybe they can find a sumo wrestler as a part of that here at some point.
That's probably the next. That'd be the next step.
I'm telling you.
No, between that and then we'll be playing games in China as a result. So don't worry, that's coming.
No, that's coming regardless. I got a feeling. All the different places we could play. But something we were talking about earlier, we're talking about Brevin Jordan. It got me thinking about looking at players and projecting players like a sumo wrestler or just somebody different and saying, okay, this guy has been a tight end at such and such a place. I was watching Matlock the other. Was it Matlock? Mm-hmm. The kid with
defensive tackle,
Chargers.
Yeah. Boise defensive tackle with transition to fullback.
Exactly, like Ricard with the Ravens. How tough is that, Nick, to look at a player and go, he plays linebacker. We don't think he's a linebacker. He might be a fullback, or he might be a
Troy Harrison,
a tight end. Yeah, Troy. How difficult is that to kind of look at somebody and go, no, you're not going to be that. You're going to be this. How does that kind of? How difficult is that?
No, it's interesting. You can't necessarily extrapolate every player. Well, he can't play this position. Right. We're going to transition to something else. A lot of it has to do with mindset and the vision of the coaching staff, whether or not you have enough of an open mind to consider a player like that. Yep. Even go back to my time in New England. We had Landon Roberts was playing, then he wasn't playing. He was a backup. Then we used him a little bit of fullback. Now he's a better linebacker than he is a fullback, but some players embrace it, and if that's their best opportunity to get on the field and play, then go ahead and do it. So you never want to pigeonhole a guy. You want to stay open-minded, but you have to be careful of if it doesn't work out here, well, we're just automatically going to make him this. So it happens, and I'd say those two cases, Matlock. Ricard is as good of an example. There's a guy, defensive tackle, didn't work out. Or he played, but he found kind of the perfect niche, the perfect offense. Now the guy's a Pro Bowl fullback or whatever he's been.
Man, you guys did it all the time. Troy Brown, Julian Edelman playing nickel. I mean, you guys were all. You were doing
Vrabel had 10 touchdown catches.
That's right.
So,
Vrabel had touchdown catches.
It's just you're just trying to maximize your roster.
Right.
You only get X number of players that you can take to the game each week. So if you can create more versatility for yourself, if that helps the team, then increase the overall value of what you're trying to do.
And you can be a sumo wrestler and play NFL. Never mind. We'll see how that goes. Nick, thanks a lot for joining us. Good luck this week.
Thanks, fellas.